Great. Okay, so thank you very much for joining us today. As I said, for those just joining us, please use the chat function to ask any questions, and Trudy will answer them at the end of today's session. I will monitor them as we go along, so don't forget to change the option to go into everyone so people can see your questions. So we will kick off now. So thank you very much for joining us. My name is Nigel Gracie from Harrison Assessments, and we are the best kept secret in psychometric assessments. Could you move us on, please, Trudy?
Sure.
Great. So there's a little bit of information about us for those who aren't familiar with Harrison. My responsibility is for Europe and Africa. And as you can see, we've got quite an extensive partner network in the Far East and the US, as well as in Europe. Our business model is very much a channel business model. So we work with partners who use our assessments, become experts in them. And I'm delighted that today, Trudy Tanner, who is our managing partner for South Africa, so she's that dot right at the bottom of Africa there, is going to be talking on today's topic. So without any further ado, over to you, Trudy.
Great. Thank you, Nigel. Hi, everyone. Lovely to be joining you on this conversation. I'm getting to talk on something that I'm really passionate about and something I'm a big believer in, employee engagement. But it's also that elusive element of business is really trying to understand what it's all about. So as Nigel said, my name is Trudy Tanner. I'm actually based the dot is further south. I'm based in Cape Town in South Africa, and I'm the CEO of an organization called SciGrow and We Evolve. So employee engagement, and what I wanted to really chat with you about today was the question of just how focused are we on what matters to our employees when we're looking at an employee engagement, and why is that question so important? And so when we go into the concept of employee engagement, what do we hear when we hear the words employee engagement? We hear so many things because employee engagement is a very well-researched topic. The research is prolific. And engagement gets a lot of airtime and attention. And we hear all these pieces of information in it that come to us. Things like performance, service, productivity, and passion are all byproducts of engagement. We hear things around how engagement can really increase productivity, innovation, and bottom line, and it reduces costs related to hiring and retention in highly competitive talent markets. We also hear a lot around how low employee engagement can cost organizations between 450, 500 billion each year. How it can increase our profitability by 21%. How 33% employees leave their jobs for new challenges. The question we've got to ask ourselves is which employees and what are the challenges that they're not getting in the organization they're in. Things around high engagement organizations outperforming organizations with low engagement by 202%. I mean, that certainly gets our attention. We look at things around only 29% of employees are satisfied with available career advancement opportunities in the organizations they're in. Again, the question that comes to my mind is which 29%, and what does career advancement look like in terms of people feeling fulfilled in that need within organizations? And do we know the answers, and could we answer those questions? Same with recognition. It's important for 37% of employees. Which employees and what does that look like? What does that mean to our individuals? We'll have things around increased customer ratings of 10%. We'll have reduced absenteeism by 41%. Improved employee engagement is a key step to business success. That when you create a positive work environment where people grow daily and receive recognition for their efforts, nothing stands in your way of achieving success in your goals. We see news headlines and headlines in the business magazines around how tension heightens as employee engagement trends downwards, and we get nervous. We've been investing so much time, effort, and resource into it. Why is it trending downwards? Do we really know the answers to that? We look at things around how 89% of HR leaders agree that ongoing peer feedback and check-ins are key for successful outcomes. And we hear about 96% of employees believing that showing empathy is an important way to advance employee retention. And employees who feel that their voice is heard are 4.6 times more likely to feel empowered to perform their best work. So the information and the reasons and all of the reasons for engagement, they're plentiful and they're not up for dispute. They're there. The question is become, therefore, not really, do we need to do an engagement journey and get an employee engagement journey, but how should we do it? Like, how can we go about engaging it? Not should we, or if it's something we should be looking at. And in the words of Peter Drucker, he says, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So before we deep dive into this whole animal of employee engagement to really understand it a bit better, I'd like to do a little poll to see where you're at with your employee engagement in the space that you're working in at the moment. So Nigel, if you could just give us a hand with that, please, Nigel, on a poll. Okay, good. So we can see that, Nigel, can you see the full question there?
Yep. So the question is, what is your company prioritizing when it comes to increasing employee engagement levels?
And the answers, can you read the full answers on your side?
Yeah. So the answers were issuing an annual engagement survey and using insights from it. 11
so
of 25.
44%. Yeah.
Yeah. There we go. Now I can see the whole question. So understanding each individual need and what needs to be done to fulfill those needs, 24%. Giving employees recognition and encouraging collaboration, 12%. And 20% said nothing.
Okay, great. So thanks for your interaction. So when we're looking at engagement and we are embarking on this journey, because now we're saying it's really about how, not if. As we do so, it's important for us to be mindful of a few questions and saying to ourselves, are we asking ourselves the right questions? And are we answering the right questions? So are we focusing on specific workplace elements that we as a business think are important for our people? Or are we focusing on what we know really matters to each individual in our business? Another question that we need to be thinking about is, are we focused purely only the concept of engagement, this number that we're trying to achieve? Or do we know the individual needs of our people? And are we considering fulfillment of those individual needs? So those are questions that we're going to deep dive into throughout the rest of the time that I have with you today. Before we go there, I thought we'd start with the definition of what is employee engagement. There's so many definitions out there, some more complicated than others, but simply the essence of engagement is the level of enthusiasm and dedication an individual feels towards both their job and their organization. But what's important is this is the output. This is really what we're hoping to achieve. But we cannot do that without understanding individual needs. We need to know what does each individual, what motivates each individual, what engages each individual. And not only that, but what needs to be done for employees to feel fulfilled in these needs. So why is this important? Dan Harrison, who's the founder of Harrison Assessments, has a lovely phrase. He says, engagement is an individual psychological phenomenon. So organizations think engagement, individuals think needs. So engagement's visible externally, but it occurs internally. When we have engaged in individuals where they're feeling that their needs are understood and being met, internally, let's have a look at what that looks like. They care about their work. They care about the performance of the company. They feel that their efforts make a difference. They find a greater sense of meaning in what they do, and they feel motivated. Externally, what we see is we see people using discretionary effort. We see people staying with the company, so our retention rates go up. We see people being more creative and innovative. See people being more invested, productive, and high-performing, and have better health and reduced stress, which in today's world is a big one. So essentially, when we look at engagement, employee engagement, it starts within each individual, which is why we need to be starting to ask those questions. Well, what needs does each individual have? What's important to them? And what do they need to feel fulfilled in those needs so that we can create an engaged culture? As we embark upon an engagement journey, there's two key principles to bear in mind. That one, that engagement is a shared responsibility. Organizations, leaders, and employees have a collective accountability for engagement. So our organizations and leaders can certainly help or hinder engagement through culture or through leadership style or processes, but employees are the agents of engagement. Only the employee knows what's really important to them and what needs to be done to fulfill that. And they are equally accountable, as is the organization and leader, in creating that engagement. And so the second principle, every person's voice matters in a very real way. As we embark on trying to embed and create engage, so to enhance and embed a culture of engagement in our businesses and in our clients' businesses, one of the things that we need to bear in mind is that engagement is one of 3 pillars that has an interactive effect in working with culture. The first one that it has an interactive effect with is our organizational leadership behaviors. And our organizational leadership behaviors are essentially our organizational values in action. So what are people doing every day that emulates the values of the organization? What does that look like? Because we can say something, we can say I'm honest, but people only believe us when we do something that shows honesty. So your organizational leadership behaviors is really important in terms of values in action. Another key principle that engagement has an interactive effect with is job fit. Do I have the right fit for the role? Am I doing something that I enjoy? That the behaviors that I'm good at, my strengths, actually align with the role that I'm doing, that I have interest related to the position, and that I have work environment preferences that correspond and correlate with the environment of the workplace that I'm in. And then we have this wonderful thing called engagement and fulfillment, which is the 3rd tier. It's the level of enthusiasm and dedication an individual feels towards their job and organization. And this is grounded in individual needs and the level to which they feel that those needs are being met. Once we can weave these 3 together, engagement and fulfillment, organizational leadership behaviors, and fit with the role, and we can weave these into the talent cycle, so from recruitment to succession planning, leadership development, what you're actually doing is then able to increase your probability of having a more engaged culture, more high performance culture, and a more sustainable and strong organizational culture. So key considerations that we believe support employee engagement. The first thing, and it comes back, it needs to start with individual needs. What are they, and are they being fulfilled? So how do we measure that? How do we help people realize that their voice really matters in us understanding what it takes to create an engaged environment and culture? The second is about empowering a mindset of engagement, that it's a shared responsibility, that there's a collective accountability for engagement between the organization, its leaders or managers, and its employees. Because when we have this collective accountability, we're able to create an engagement that works for the organization, for the leader, and the employee. We need to look at creating a culture of psychological safety. How do we go about empowering management and people in the business with skills that they need to build this culture of psychological safety and trust, to be able to have collaborative, courageous, and empowered engagement conversations with one another? The next principle is around how do we enable focused, empowering conversations on actions required to fulfill the needs? So how do we keep a simple process of shared conversations where we can understand what you need from me as a leader, what the organization needs, and what I need from you, so that we can co-create an action plan that helps in terms of building engagement, and one that's customized to me as the individual too, right? And then the last one is we need to invest in a simple tool for individuals and businesses to access and complete this. How do we make sure that the way we're getting information in is simple, so that it increases user engagement with the tool, and also that we reduce the risk of any assessment fatigue? So the solution. At Sagro, when we're looking for solutions for our clients and driving into supporting them and trying to strengthen their culture and optimizing engagement, we found that the Harrison assessment was best suited for the job. Why did we find that? Well, first of all, every individual's voice matters in a very real way. Harrison captures individual engagement needs or factors in the order of priority to the individual. So it says to you, this is what matters to me and what is important to me in the order of importance to me. It also then looks at what individual fulfillment levels are. So each person's level of fulfillment. So this need is a priority. How fulfilled am I feeling in that need being met? And then it also provides linked to that individual supporting behaviors. And what behaviors can I develop in myself that can help enable my engagement in the organization and in the work that I'm doing in the job and in the organization? The second reason we liked and we felt it worked for our clients is it's a single 25-minute smart questionnaire. So it takes 25 minutes to get the information in, and we're able to have access to those 3 key tiers that we speak about it being important in the culture journey and engagement. We get access to engagement, we get access to leadership behaviors, those values in action, and we get access to job fit. All 3 key principles from that one simple questionnaire. That's very easy for individuals to complete. The third is clients have access to a simple, powerful analytics dashboard to view their engagement information at any level at a simple touch of a button. And the fourth is there's a cloud-based technology, so it's easy and cost-effective to implement for clients as a solution. So why Harrison assessments? This gives you a little bit of an idea of the view that we get to see as a client. If you're sitting with a dashboard, this is just one element where at an organizational level, when you're looking at engagement at an organizational level, it takes each individual's results and aggregates them up to whichever level you're looking at. So you can look at it at a team level, you can look at it at a department, at a function, at a region, at an organization. And so this is an example of people's results being aggregated upwards of what's important to them, aggregating up to an organizational level. And you can see for overall fulfillment, so I'll help you to read the report a little, is overall fulfillment is 62%. You'll have the reds, which say 56 of my employees at the moment are not feeling fulfilled and are potential flight risks. 21 are partially fulfilled and 54 are feeling fully engaged. And then 4 didn't answer the questionnaire. You'll see there's also some gray ones that when we break it down to each individual engagement factor or engagement need. So here is a great example on One Stable Career. The first score you see is the level of importance of that engagement factor in the organization. If you're looking at it at an individual level, the level of importance of that factor or need at an individual level. So you'll see this number here, and that's rated out of 10. So quite important. And then underneath it, you'll see the level of percentage of fulfillment that people are feeling. So if you've got 8.3 is a really important engagement factor, 82% of people are actually fulfilled and feeling engaged in the fact that their career is stable. 35 people are potential flight risks on this need. 12 are partially, and 65 are feeling fully engaged in that space. 19 are saying this actually isn't important to me as a need, which is also important, and then the 4 that hadn't completed. So what's great is you're able to see in order of priority is what are the individuals, team, organization, region, function needs and fulfillment levels in order of priority. You're also able to, when the client's in the system, they're able to click on that 35 to see who are the 35 people we need to be engaging in conversations with and on what factors. You're also able to have impactful insights and visuals to identify year-on-year movements, which is really important, and it helps consultants like myself to get a quick view of where things are at, as well as organizations when they're looking at it for themselves. So if you've got year-on-year information, so this is year 0, year 1, you're able to quickly see that there are higher levels of fulfillment starting to come through. And we're also quickly able to identify at-risk or unfulfilled employees. And when you're in the system, you're able to click on it and the names pop up for you to be able to know how we're going to engage those individuals in the right conversations that matter to them. So the process, when we look at an overview of an engagement process, something that we find works well and is something to think about when you're looking at answering a how, not the if, is the first thing is really about contextualizing the importance of engagement in the context of an organization's culture and strategy. When you link engagement to culture and strategy, it just makes it so much more, the impact of it is so much stronger, and the results that you're going to get from it are so much more powerful. It's got legs when there's context attached to your strategy and your culture. The second is really diving into that every person's voice counts in a very real way. So how do you then take stock of where are people at with their current engagement and fulfillment on the factors that are important to them? But then it doesn't stop there. We also then need to understand the meaning attached to each engagement factor and what fulfillment of each engagement factor looks like. So for example, In the earlier slide, you saw one stable career. Often we will assume that that means job security, and we'll go, well, geez, who can expect job security in today's world? But what's fascinating is when you actually go and ask people what it means to them, you might come out with very different answers. And in one of the case studies we did, when we asked about what one stable career looks like, people came back going, well, I want to know that I've got leaders that I can trust, that the business is in the right hands, that I know the strategy, that I have transparency of where we're going as a business, and that I have contact with my senior leaders on a regular basis. That's very different to how I would have understood what one stable career is. And so that's what's so important, is to understand that that need is important, but we also need to know what does it take for that need to feel fulfilled in those individuals' eyes and minds. And then what we're able to do is with that information, we empower individual engagement discussions between individuals and line leaders. We co-create those focused engagement and communication strategies and action plans. And then we have those regular responsive feedback loops, that qualitative feedback. And then annually check in where we're at in terms of that reviewment of the engagement and fulfillment factors. So a 7-step process in terms of what we need to be looking at in terms of how we go about engaging people and understanding what their needs are, what it's going to take to fulfill those needs to help us achieve a more engaged culture. A quick case study. So some key outcomes that can happen from an engagement process, and that did happen after a year in a particular case study. And these comments that I'm going to share with you are actually from the mouths of people in the business themselves and the employees in the business themselves. Employees felt seen, they felt valued, felt calm, in control, and they had a trust in both leadership and the future of the business as a result of the engagement journey. Individuals felt empowered and supported with development exercises to support engagement. Leadership were empowered to engage in purposeful communication. So it's focused with each employee, with each team, with each region. There were focused and purposeful conversations on issues that mattered to them, not just the issues that mattered to management. And so this strengthened the connection and the trust between employees and leadership. There was execution of a focused, meaningful engagement strategy and action plan. Everybody was aligned. Everyone knew where we were going and what needed to be done, was the words that fed back. There was a reinforcement of the importance of how being aligned in what matters to employees supports the view that employees are valued in the business and their voices truly do matter. And what that really is in essence saying is, you say that I'm important to you, and what you do shows that I'm important to you, that my needs are important. So there was a real good congruence between what was being said and what was being done. There's an increase in individual and business performance. They experienced an increase in that, and it's been ongoing. And there were increased in fulfillment engagement factors. So the improvement of a 72 to 75% completion rate, we believe that's an important measure to look at as well, because sometimes people can get disillusioned. They'll complete it and think, oh, well, nothing's getting done. And then next year it comes around and then I'm just not interested. We've actually seen an improvement from 72 to 75% year on year of people wanting to share their voices because they feel that they're being heard and there's action being taken. And then there was improvement in fulfillment levels across 8 of the 11 engagement factors that were seen as important in the business, with the other 3 remaining constant, which were fairly high as well. In the words of a CEO, which I love to quote this particular CEO, he says, "Our engagement and culture journey has shown me that a sustainable business can only be deemed sustainable with engaged employees. Without engaged employees, all great strategies and plans are dead in the water." And so that's just a little quote that a CEO shared with me. And he was a bit of a skeptic on the engagement journey starting out. And he's now been converted to the importance, and he's now an ally of employee engagement. So that's a little bit on engagement and things to think about when you're embarking on what should we be looking at to strengthen and enhance and embed an employee engagement strategy from our perspective and the learnings that we've had down here in the south of the world.
That was great. Thank you so much, Trudy. You've jumped ahead, but that's okay. I've got this. Please, anybody got any questions? Please, as we say, put them in the chat. I've got one observation and a question for you. And one of the things I noticed that you talked about, the language that you use, people feel valued, they feel respected, they care about the organisation they work for. And of course, this is all an emotional response. Engagement is emotional. And I think that's really important. So that was my observation. The question I've got, and as you know, Julie, because we've spoken about this, engagement is really, really a real passion of mine. And certainly in the UK, it's sometimes a struggle to get the C-suite on board and bought in. And you've quoted some really, really valuable, important stats and evidence, but even then, you said there that CEO was a skeptic to begin with. Anything you can share, any advice, any experience about how do you get the C-suite who ultimately, they need to buy in, they need to support it, not least of all, they probably need to sign up on the cost. Any suggestions as to how best to get the C-suite on board?
So I think it's, what we find is really important is to help understand the benefits of it and how it's such a crucial factor in terms of building organizational culture. And I think the whole principle of culture is becoming such an important idea, that again, back to Peter Drucker's statement, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And when you realize the value that investing in employee engagement is going to have in terms of the execution of your strategy, execution of your plans, it's really about a conversation centered in that. And so again, when that first slide that I pop up with all the information that's thrown at us, the worst we ask is, what could we lose if we do it? And what do we lose if we don't do it? And what's at risk? And so it's really around a risk and return conversation. And are we going to see the benefits? And I think, the hard part is, as you say, selling in that first year. But once people start to see the results year on year, it's a given. It's like, okay, we get it. And also, I've had a few conversations with CEOs and businesses, and they go, there's times where I've been sitting at night trying to figure out, what am I doing differently? My business is the same, my people are the same, my products are the same, my markets are the same, the economy is taking strain, and yet I'm performing. And the only thing I can put it down to is the work that we're doing on the engagement side and the culture side. So, when you start to see the results, it makes it so much easier. But for me, it's really about tying it into how to strengthen your culture, and how to reduce that effort of constantly retraining people, bringing people in. How do you retain and upskill your existing people? And the only way you're going to retain them is if they love what they're doing.
Yeah, great. So, some of those hard metrics, talent acquisition, talent retention, if you're a commercial organization, revenue, profit, EBITDA, whatever, all those, Okay, so great. We've got some further questions in. Thomas from Norway has asked the first slide, where there's some numbers you quoted, and you would like to find the sources. So won't do that now. We'll provide that for you. I'm sure Trudy can share the studies where that information came from. Thank you for your comment, and Justina, for excellent materials. So, as is Curie, I hope I pronounced that correctly. So I'll just read it out. As I understand, the algorithm used to value engagement factors and assess their fulfillment gives more points to what employees feel is important than what they feel is unimportant to them. Would this be correct?
No. So what happens is, and as I understand it, and if I've understood the question correctly, is the algorithm asks what is important to you, and that kind of prioritizes the level of need. And then it asks you a separate question that says, how important, based on what's important to you, how fulfilled are you feeling in that need being met?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got two similar questions, one from Elizabeth that's come in under the Q&A, and one from Justina. I'll read Justina's, but it's essentially asking the same. Do you come across a question from clients about anonymity? Clients use traditional engagement surveys are tied to the anonymity aspect. So I've got an answer for that, but Trudy, why don't you give your response?
Yes, so there is a solution on that, but we believe in not using anonymity. So and again, that's why we link it in with the culture, because again, it's really hard to understand what something means to an individual when you don't know who the individual that's sharing it with you. Same with like 360 degrees, right? So So again, that's why that whole principle, that key principle around building psychological safety is such a crucial element in the engagement process, is how do you upskill your leaders and your people with the skills needed to build that psychological safety and trust so that you can have those open, collaborative, courageous engagement conversations. So it really needs to be integrated into the process of engagement.
Yeah.
And your answer on anonymity, Nigel?
Yeah, I mean, so my view and how the Harrison view is just that the devil's in the detail. I've seen many anonymous engagement surveys, and a very common response is, if the question is something like, what would you like the business to do better? Communication always comes up, always, in my experience. But how do you want to be communicated to? How Nigel wants to be communicated to and how Trudy wants to be communicated to can be very different, and Justina and Sim and Thomas. So yeah, we believe that the Harrison position, and if you look at, and certainly the UK, as I say, I've been involved and with engagement for the best part of 20 years. The levels haven't really meaningfully increased. And yet the vast majority, if they are doing anything, companies are using an anonymous engagement survey.
Yeah.
So
if we, Nigel, is also like, if we look at the whole collective accountability and the shared responsibility of engagement, right? So organization leaders and employees. So when you're looking at what's the role of the organization, the leader in terms of building psychological safety and trust and skill, but also where we find that people are less worried about the anonymous aspect is when you're talking to them to say, we want to understand what really matters to you, so that when we're looking at building engagement with you, we know what that looks like in terms of what it means for you. So I can only have a meaningful conversation on development with you if I know what development looks like for you in terms of feeling that you're growing in your role. Now I might be having that conversation with you because I think it's important, but actually to you, what's more important is the opportunity to advance. So we should be having a conversation rather on that. So when you position it that to individuals, that we're going to have focused conversations around what matters to you so that we can work together in fulfilling those needs so that we have that win-win, mutually beneficial relationship, that is a lot more. So there's a lot, it's more of it's not a measurement, it's seeking to understand. That really underpinned by that curiosity of what's important to you. And again, as I say, one of the comments that was made is when people were doing it and then they saw that actually the conversations were happening around what's important to me, it just builds that congruence of trust of what you're saying and what you're doing really matters. And so it builds trust.
Yeah, 100%. And that trusting is critical. If I can't be trusted to have a grown-up conversation with my line manager or with the organization, or if the issue I've got with my line manager and I can't communicate them, there is I can talk. If we can't be honest and open about each other, then you've got a bigger problem.
But again, why it's so important to build that element of empowering people to have those conversations with the right skills, right? So it's about how do you support from an organization leadership perspective, and how do you support from an employee perspective? It's a three-pronged approach. I almost call it like for me it's like a tripod. If one falls down, it all falls over. You need all three working together. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Aziz has rephrased the question, so we'll come back to it. Okay. The bar chart we saw, I'll just read it out. The bar chart we saw at the beginning ranked the most important factors and their level of fulfillment. The highest ranked factor had a high level of importance and a low level of unimportance. However, the second highest ranked factor had a high level of importance, but also a high level of unimportance. With the latter being notably higher than for the subsequent ranked factors, therefore it seems that the important gets more weight in the algorithm than unimportant in ranking engagement factors. Does this hold? I'm slightly confused. The explanation has made me more confused about the question than the original question.
So I
Trudy, we can always take this offline and
let me give it a bash at answering and see if I've interpreted the question correctly. If not, please ask me again. But absolutely. So this chart shows the fulfillment factors, in other words, the needs from order of priority. So one stable career is more important as a need than once advancement, which is more important than, absolutely. So you'll see it jumps from 8.3 down to 2.7 in terms of levels of importance. What's also important to know is that anything that's 6 and above is actually seen as a motivational factor. These become important, but not necessarily motivational elements, anything below 6. So we don't get too complicated, but simple answer is from the top to the bottom, you've got left to right, order of importance of that need.
Yeah.
Then what
Okay.
we have is the fulfillment level of 82% and 56% and 67%. So absolutely, when you're looking at where is our biggest potential need and problem that we want to zone in on or really understand and get curious about is around advancement, because it's a high need with a low fulfillment. But we don't take our eye off the ball on all the other things, because what you pay attention to changes. So you want to always be looking at maintaining and building in a mindset.
Great.
Around engagement.
Thanks, Trudy. And I think also what's been asked in that under wants advancement, what does the 66 in the red, and then obviously we've got 66, 18, 26, 21. What's that number mean?
Right. So then of that, in one's advancement, to these individuals, the 66 plus the 18 plus the 26, one's advancement is an important need to them. 66 people are feeling unfulfilled. 18 are feeling partially fulfilled. We probably need to have a conversation still. And 26 are feeling fulfilled. So you can see that heightens, there's a risk here of potential flight risk.
I get you. So 60 says there's 66 people in that organisation who are unfulfilled when it comes to wants advancement.
Correct, yeah.
Great. Okay. And great. Thanks for confirming that. Okay. And then Liz made a great example of talking about the work at Microsoft, where they've gone beyond measuring employee engagement to look at thriving employees. I'll be honest, I'm not familiar with that, with the link, but I'm certainly going to be clicking on it later. And Bain and Co have also identified some interesting research on productivity increase when employees are inspired. And I just think that's a great point. It's, that's the next step. Once we've got engaged employees, then we want thriving employees. And, that engagement drives people thriving. Certainly in my experience.
Yeah.
Let's see, we've got a couple more questions. We're going up and down a bit now. No, okay, that's just as easy understanding. Great. So does anybody have any further questions? As you can see on the screen, we received a Brandon Hall Award. The ceremony was only last week. So we're very, very excited and very proud of not our first one, but it's our most recent one. But once again, thanks for joining us. Please look out for any marketing material regarding the next webinar. And hopefully you'll be able to join us very soon next time we talk.